Hey there, Elizabeth. Welcome to the Canadian Wealth Secrets podcast. We're excited to chat with you today. Kyle's met you a few times. We've been introduced, but hey, we want to introduce you to the audience. We want to introduce you to our listeners. So take a moment here. Tell us about yourself. Who is Elizabeth Kelly? And where are you coming from? And what's your entrepreneurial shtick?
You want me to answer all that in like 30
Yeah,
seconds or less
you
too,
got
No,
it.
right?
actually 20 if you
Yeah,
could.
less,
Keep it,
20.
less.
keep it
Okay.
short.
No,
No, I'm just
I'll
kidding.
give you 10.
just kidding, just kidding.
Take all the
Um,
time you need.
First of all, thank you so much for having me. It's wonderful to meet you guys. It's always amazing to meet fellow entrepreneurs who are looking to make the real estate investing space a better place to be. Um, So I started almost 20 years ago as a real estate investor. I was, my husband and we bought pre-construction condos. That was a big mistake. Never do that. And and then we were buying single family homes and turning them into duplexes. And this was before
Hmm.
they had the sexy term BRRRR. And we just kind of we figured out we were doing the right thing. We were doing it the wrong way. We took some courses through Rich Dad, and we loved it. So we started a property management company. We bought a whole bunch of doors. We got really big real fast. And then we started to see those growing pains that a lot of businesses do, where the infrastructure has to catch up, the systems and processes have to catch up. And
Hmm.
sometimes when you grow really big, really fast, you can find ways to kind of stabilize. And then other times, I think we're seeing right now in the world of real estate, sometimes you go really big, really fast, and then things kind of implode. So I'm really passionate right now about helping people. And I just did a little video this morning. I don't want to call us real estate investors anymore. I want to call us real estate entrepreneurs,
Hmm.
because
Mm,
investors does not accurately capture all the hats we wear, all the roles we have, and all the things we do, right?
Right.
So I feel like it's a bit of a misnomer, and it feeds into that idea that real estate is get rich quick, and it's super easy. You can do it with all money from everybody else and none of your own money.
Right.
totally. And right out of the gate, like that's the
Mhm.
part. And you said a lot of things that I think is really important. We could probably, talk for the entire interview just about what you had said and kind of going down those rabbit holes. Like, you had talked about mistakes that you had made. I think, being ready for that at the beginning of the journey is really important because mistakes are going to happen. Something I also heard that I think, I want to make sure that we sort of highlight for those who are listening is, you then, after you had already started, you had already made mistakes, you had already had some success, and then you started taking courses. So there's maybe a lesson to be learned there. I have also been down that path as well, where I will call myself I'm going to use frugal as the word when I began, but I'm a fact finder, right? So I think for a lot of people that are, like me and like to go down the rabbit hole and want to do all the learning, and they feel good and they're driven to do that learning, it's almost like you have some sort of like maybe hero syndrome where you want to come up with the answer instead of being guided, when in reality you think about the time it takes to go down those
Mhm.
rabbit holes and come up and make the mistakes and do all of those things. And of course, it's all
Hmm.
happened. You can't take it back. However, for those people who are looking to take maybe a step into real estate, there's an opportunity for you to learn from folks with experience, to be guided by people with experience. I know that you do a lot of coaching and mentoring in the space. So lots of great things going on there. Before we dig deeper, though, I'm curious. So it was 20 years ago when you began this journey. At the time, were you a golden handcuffer, as we like to call it? We coined those, in a job, feeling kind of safe. John and I are both recovering teachers, recovering high school math teachers. So we had those, handcuffs on, and we were like, yeah, like we're going to be okay here. But it also made it really difficult for us to kind of go, we can do this on our own and we could be freed. So I'm curious, Elizabeth Kelly, people are wondering, like, were you just super brave? Were you scared like I was when I
She was
began?
born. She was
Tell us
born into
more.
entrepreneurship.
Yeah, there you go.
No, I wasn't. So funny that you asked that. I worked for years. I worked for the MS Society. I worked for the Heart and Stroke Foundation. I worked for United Way. I did fundraising. So I did sales without having a
Right.
tangible product to sell. I sold warm, fuzzy feelings. Um, and then after, I guess about 15 years there, it got really challenging because you're trying to do so much with so little, right? They're always watching the bottom line. So I actually moved over to I I got my life insurance and my home and auto insurance licenses, and I worked for a state farm broker or a state farm agent. And I was 2 years into that, just written all my exams, just starting to, see the results of all my hard work. And my husband came to me, he's like, I can't manage the properties, part-time in the evenings. He's like, you need to leave your job. Because of course, he was making 3 times, 4 times what I was. And I just thought, I've put so much time and energy into this. And that transition was so bumpy. I'm not accountable to anybody else. Nobody else is telling me what to do. I don't know what to do with my days.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny, it wasn't until Multifamily Conference a couple of years ago when Kevin O'Leary was on stage and he talked about his journey into entrepreneurship and the fact that he never fit in anywhere. And he was
Mm,
pretty much an entrepreneur right from the beginning. And a light bulb went off for me. I'm like, that's why I had clashes in business. That's why I lost sleep when people asked me to do things that I couldn't live with. That,
hmm
talking to people about their auto premiums and why they're going up, and knowing that what I was saying was not necessarily an accurate reflection of what was, like, those were the things that ate me up at night.
Mm-hmm.
And I always thought it just meant I wasn't a team player. I thought it meant that, I was, not very good at following the rules. And it meant I was an entrepreneur stuck in a job.
right.
And that
Yeah.
was huge for me.
Yeah. That is huge. And I think people are nodding their heads going like, I feel like that describes, me in that exact same situation. And I want to think about, the way you said what you did for a living. You said you were selling things without, that tangible product, and you clearly had learned skills along the way. Like what would you say like that work? Like how did that work basically like jump you off into that entrepreneurial environment, and like what was probably the biggest impact that work had on the work you do now?
Actually probably held me back because I always needed to feel good about what I did. What I did, it wasn't about the money for me, it was about the impact. It was about helping people. And so the reason why I worked in not for profit, I could have been an event coordinator, I could have
Hmm.
done sales for a company, but I wanted to have an impact. I wanted to leave a legacy. So
Right.
when I made that transition to real estate, and everything is very much focused on the money, and it didn't feel like it fit for me. I didn't care about buying multifamily buildings. I mean, I know people eat, sleep, and breathe it, but for me, it didn't sit well until I discovered rent to owns. And that's when the light bulb went off for me. And my husband and I actually separated into two different divisions of our business. And he was the one who primarily was looking for the multifamilies. And I was the one who managed the investors and the staff and did the rent to owns, because I am the people person and I want to
Mm-hmm.
make things a win-win for everyone.
I love that. And you highlight something really important. I think, if you go all the way back to when you were working and fundraising for different nonprofits, and then you think about the work you do for, say, rent to own, as well as the work you do through coaching, consulting, mentoring, and you really think about the end goal. And I always say, like, a true salesperson, we have an episode that, we talk about the selling being a really important skill in any
Mm-hmm.
business and
Yeah.
and in life in general. But what we define as selling is very different than what people get in their mind when they think about being sold to. And this idea of selling is really about knowing the person you're chatting with, knowing who they are, what they want, what's going to help make their life better, and then bringing them to the solution and helping them to understand the solution. But the actual intent is so that they come together and that they actually are happier afterwards, right? Like, that's true salesmanship, that's true selling. And I think as humans, I think we do typically a really poor job of it. Like, you know, people feel forced to sell something because their job is to sell this thing. Like you were selling auto insurance and you're like, I don't even know if I think you need auto insurance. You know, I don't know if you need like this feature or whatever it is. And meanwhile, you're feeling like you've got to do it when, you know, I'm going to guess through rent to own, you see the value that you're bringing to people. You're seeing, and oftentimes someone who wants to get into a rent to own, they probably see the value in home ownership. What they might not see yet is how a rent to own structure could be designed such that everybody wins, right? Which at the end of the day is really the key. You want to make sure that when they do it, that they feel like they're actually further ahead than they would have been had they not met you or had the opportunity. So I'm curious, what would you say is like, what would you say is like maybe your unique ability in sort of applying that skill set? And it sounds like you're very, you know, things come from the heart. Like when you're doing something, you want to do it and you want to feel good about it. What would you say is maybe the unique ability that you bring to either, we'll call it maybe the rent to own space, or maybe it's, you know, in the work that you do when you're helping investors along their way?
Um, I think perhaps it's that, and I love that you asked that question because I love podcasts like this where you get me thinking and it's
I love
not
it.
just, following a
Always our
script.
goal. We
Right.
don't want it to be the same cookie cutters. So that's awesome.
No, no, I love that. So I think I perhaps have kind of two pieces. One is I really try and listen and understand. I genuinely love and care about people. So I want to understand what is their perspective, where are they coming from, and what is the goal that they want to achieve. And then because I've done so many real estate strategies in so many different markets for so long in so many different investment climates, it enables me, instead of going, okay, well, you need to do this, it enables me to pick different pieces and kind of put them together. Like I'm working on a really exciting project right now. I can't say too much about it, but rent to own is just a component of it. And then there's other pieces of it that will come together. And I feel like for investors right now, you can't just say, I'm a multifamily investor and get out there and grind and just look for apartment buildings and apartment buildings and apartment buildings. The best deals are made. They're pieces, they're key learnings picked and put together into this one opportunity. And I feel like as a coach, because I don't have a cookie cutter program, because it's one-on-one and it's, this week, let's identify what your needs are. What are your obstacles? What's holding you back? Let's address those. And then you're going to spend the next week or 2 weeks going and moving the needle forward the most. Anybody can consume podcasts and things like that. And you guys are providing a tremendous service, sharing information and providing information, and how everybody implements that is going to look and feel different. And that's why and where a good coach should come in, is helping you pick from all these pieces of information to create this map or this plan for how you're going to invest.
Yeah, like if you look back in the most successful people, everyone has a like everyone utilizes a coach. They are there. They're there. We can't do this, on our own if we want to be as successful as you want to be. So I really love that. And I want to bring us back to something you said earlier, and this is kind of goes to what you were talking about, that we're not entrepreneurial investors. We're entrepreneurial, or sorry, you're not real estate investors, you're real estate entrepreneurs. And we think about, like, I think, because when I think about that, when people say I'm a real estate investor, they're thinking there's this one person, they're doing their research, they're looking at this and they're like, I'm putting some money in here, or I'm putting some money over here. And it's like a singularity, situation, instead of you're building a business, right? So
There you go.
treating this as a business versus treating this as like, hey, it's my side hobby. And I'm kind of like, adding things to my portfolio, but you're thinking about business, and that's the way that we view it as well. So if we're thinking about real estate entrepreneurs, and we're thinking about real estate businesses and creating that these businesses, and we think about businesses like that today versus businesses like that in the past, like we're in a 2024, things have changed. Like, how do you see that that our businesses, like, how are they changing now versus before? Like, you've been doing this for a long time, so it's like, how do you see that business changed And what do we see like then project? Like what is it going to look like in the future?
Well, I'll tell you, it's a heck of a lot easier now than it was because when I was putting offers in 2005, I was driving to the realtor's office and signing everything on
Right.
paper, and then they were
Right.
putting things into the fax machine.
Right.
And when two negotiations had gone by, you could no longer read anything, and you had to start over again. So technology has played a tremendous role. The access to information now is phenomenal. You've got things like Chat GPT, which are making it so much easier to be an entrepreneur. You can get Chat GPT to help you write some of your marketing posts, and you can do a lot more in a much shorter period of time, which I think gives people confidence, but it might also make them overly confident.
Mm,
Mm-mm. Mm.
So it's like, well,
True.
how can I fail? Because I can do all of these things. I can outsource and assistants and VAs. Like there's a very popularized culture about what it looks and feels like to be an investor right now. But we're not talking enough about the other stuff, the non-tangible things, the things we need to know. Like my microphone wasn't working this morning. There's no tech support for me. I mean, I joke it's my husband, but
mm.
there really isn't. Like at some point I'm going to have to, probably take my computer into a repair shop, and there's nobody who's going to do that for me. So that piece of it, I think having that knowledge of being able to run all the different areas of your business, having the network to be able to know the right people to be able to call when you are not an expert in an area, and being able to put aside the ego and
Mm.
thinking that you know everything and can be everything and can do everything, and asking for help in the right moment, recognizing when you are not in fact the best person.
That the message there is so awesome and clear. Like when I think back to, I had the vision of you driving to make the offer, and now it's like you can make like 16 offers in a day if you really want to. That's a busy person who's doing that. However, it's like you just, it really is, I guess, interesting to see how, I mean, 20 years is a long period of time, but if you think about that and go like, wow, it's a very different space. I think coming off the heels of the pandemic, where a lot of people, specifically in Canada, where, the Canadian government, backstopped everyone to basically, we'll call it, have the same amount of money available to them, but not being able to use it anywhere because they were stuck in their house. So the logic there, I'm not quite sure of who thought that was a great idea. However,
So
so what did people do? They all were using, I should say there was a group of people who looked at the pandemic as an opportunity to learn, as an opportunity to better themselves. There was also other groups of people where the pandemic had, a really negative impact on, on their life and, how they felt. But when you come out of that and then, you think about how things have gone and the fact that there's a lot of money printing, there was a lot, too many dollars chasing too few assets. And then now we're in this place where now it's like the reset button's been hit by the government, by the Fed, by the Bank of Canada. And it really gets you thinking about, wow, it seems like no matter what strategy you might have been exploring, if you're a newer investor, if you were in the pandemic and you wanted to explore wholesaling, or you wanted to explore rent to own or flipping or BRRRRs, or, like whatever you want to call it, or even buy and hold, you probably were a winner. And then all of a sudden you enter into this market where things have changed so quickly, so dramatically. Stress tests are higher, like, interest rates are higher, everything has changed. My wonder for you would be, you hop on a call with some of your investors, be it folks who have been doing this for a while, or maybe some newer investors. How do you help them navigate where they are now? Like, my guess is people come in with the thing that maybe made them some money a couple of years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and for some people it's still working, but for others, I'm going to guess it's not working, or, maybe their confidence has been rattled, right? Where they go, oh, I
Mhm.
thought this was going to be, much easier, and finding it much more difficult. So like, how do you help someone sort of refocus and kind of get back on track so that they can continue doing the best work that they're able to do and are driven to do?
Oh, I love that. So many parts to that. So the first thing I like to do is really take stock of where they are now. And a lot of people, we have this tendency to wear these rose-colored glasses in our lives and to think that things are better than they actually are. So the first thing we do is take a look at if they have a portfolio, we take a look at that. We look at the cash flow, we look at the potential, we look at the growth that, is possible. What is this? If we take this exact portfolio, project 15, 20 years in the future, what is that going to return for them? For a lot of investors right now, this is the first time they've taken a really hard look at things.
Mm,
There's a lot of investors who don't even necessarily know their true numbers. So the exercise that my clients go through before we have our first session, where they actually put their numbers into a spreadsheet and have to look at them. I had one lady message me. She's like, I'm in tears. She's like, I had no idea. She said, I knew we were struggling every month. I didn't know what that number was, and now I'm shocked. So that clarity, it's like being sick. If we refuse to go to the doctor to get a label for it, then we
hmm
kind of hope it'll go away, but what's the likelihood that that's going to happen? So that's the first piece, is to get the clarity around where we are right now. And then the next piece is the clarity around where do we want to get to? So what is our end result? Do we want to increase our net worth? Do we want to replace our income? Are we just looking to supplement our annual cash flow to go on a great trip? Having the clarity around what that looks like, and then having the really honest conversations around what each investment strategy provides in terms of opportunities. People are like, oh, wholesaling, I want to do this because there's, I don't need to have any money. Okay, well, it's not going to increase your net worth, it's going to replace income. And you need to have multiple deals every month in order to do that. Because I know in the heyday, I mean, I was looking at wholesale deals where the wholesale fee was $60,000. I'm like, I thought wholesalers were supposed to be doing volume deals, and
Right,
it was
right.
about the numbers. I didn't know you were replacing your income with one deal. So,
Yeah.
and that's not to disparage wholesalers, because quite honestly, I think they have some great they find some great deals,
Yeah,
and they
yeah,
provide them for us. So they
yeah.
provide a necessary service. But that clarity around, what is the next step or what is the next thing? And I hear so many people say, when I talk to them, so when I do discovery calls with people, they think that they're going to be sold. And in actual fact, they're not, because I will not be the right coach for everyone. I'm not going to be the right fit. I'm not going to be
Right.
perfect. So you're actually telling me that you are the ideal client and I can help you. Um, so when I do those discovery calls, people assume they're going to be sold. And at the end, they're like, well, I'm saving all my money for a down payment. And that's a fantastic idea. But what happens if you buy the wrong property? Or you buy in the wrong location? So now you've taken all of your money, and instead of educating yourself first and making sure you're making the right decision,
hmm
you're just making a decision and crossing your fingers
Yeah.
and hoping that it works. And if you're going to do that, you might as well go to the casino and put everything on red, because that's pretty much what you're doing.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah. So I think what am I'm hearing? Like I often wonder, like what are the other real estate entrepreneurs struggling with, and what I'm hearing that you're hearing is clarity, like a lack of real clarity of what we really want. Would you say like
Mhm.
that's the biggest struggle right now for probably not just real estate entrepreneurs, but probably entrepreneurs in general? But I mean, like, is that the biggest struggle you're hearing, or is there a bigger struggle that you're hearing that that this over here, this is really what people struggle with, and you're doing a lot of work to help them with that?
Unfortunately, I think there's a lot of misinformation out there. And when you're a newer investor, you can be easily led by it. So the idea that you can buy properties and make a ton of money with none of your own money, that's a really big
Right.
piece of misinformation that's out there. And quite frankly, my philosophy is just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Mm.
Those are the investors who are struggling right now.
Right.
There's misinformation in terms of that investing in real estate is easy, or that it's get rich quick. That's not the case. Clarity is definitely something that's missing, but I think the other piece, unfortunately, that's missing is that really honest communication about what the reality is like to be a real estate investor. It's been 20 years, and I would not say that I am, well, a multimillionaire and can retire and do nothing. I mean, I guess I could, but I don't know. It's not easy. And everybody thinks it is. It's not easy. It's not buy a house and forget about it, especially not in Ontario. not with the landlord tenant board. And things are constantly changing. So if you think that you're going to buy a couple of pieces of property and ignore them for 20 years and then, sell them and make millions of dollars, that's not going to be because you did the right thing. It's going to be because you got lucky.
Right.
So we can reduce a lot of the risk that comes with real estate investing by educating ourselves and by continuing to stay on top of things. We should be sponges. We should be continuing to learn. And, listening to some of the kind of popular tropes out there, that's not going to give the results that we were hoping for, I think.
That's a fantastic, answer. And I think, John and I have talked about this on the podcast a number of times about really figuring out your why, right? And I mean, this is true whether you're an investor, whether you're a real estate entrepreneur, whether you want to be a passive index, stock investor, whether you want to just work a golden handcuff job. Like, we talk about golden handcuffs all the time. And I feel like we have to keep reminding people like there's nothing wrong with that if that's what you want, that's what I thought I wanted for a very long time. I don't regret any of it. And I actually, some days I'm like, I kind of miss like that world. I know I'm not the type of person to be able to do that every day for, another 15 or 20 years, but I just think getting clear on what it is you want is really key. And I think, your point about misinformation is so on point that, we've been on a lot of discovery calls as well. And, we look to give people next steps. We try to point them in the right direction and pass them on to people that might be a good fit for them. And something that we've heard time and time again is that a lot of people, especially those who are kind of just entering into this world, or maybe, we'll call it the COVID investors, that have come out of COVID and they've explored different strategies that kind of scratch the surface. What they're looking for is like the home run instead of really assessing like, who are you and what will actually give you the energy, the excitement, the will to actually do the work. Because I've done a rent to own before, and you've done a lot of rent to owns. I've done a rent to own. It can be a great strategy for the right people, but it's a lot of work too. Like there's a lot of things that you have to do, systems you have to put in place. There's a lot of moving parts, and I recognize, luckily, that I don't know if that's like my like bread and butter strategy, like we're more buy and holders. We'll call it like the slow burr is sort of our strategy. We pick properties and there's no urgency to get them all fixed up, because if that's the case, I get stressed and I don't like having to be on the phone all day trying to find so that's my strategy that seems to work for me. And I enjoy that. And I don't try to suggest that it's the right strategy for everyone. So I really like your explanation around that ultimately it sounds like, you have to do a lot of listening to people and helping them to land on where they are, who they are, where do they want to go, and how are they going to get there, which, really makes me wonder. And I'm sure, we're starting this thing we call the secret sauce. Okay. Because it's Canadian wealth secrets. So we're curious, what would you say is like your Canadian wealth secret sauce? And it might be just something that is on your mind now, or maybe if you look back over your 20 years, like what do you think would be the secret sauce that has worked well for you to put you in a place where you're able to do the work that you love doing and enjoy doing, without necessarily having to feel like, you're hustling to get the next client. It sounds like you're very selective in the clients that you work with.
I am. I really look for fit. I look for people who are motivated, people who are action oriented, people who are open. It's amazing the number of people who are interested in hiring coaches because they're looking for validation that their opinions are the right ones, even if they haven't been investing for very long. Secret sauce, I think it for me is just being curious. I try not to bring a lot of ego into conversations. I approach everything with the assumption that there's always something for me to learn. I learn from my coaching clients too, whether I'm learning about specific markets that they're interested in, or whether I'm learning about, great people, that they can put on their power team, or, meeting with you guys and learning how a different piece of the portfolio in terms of providing diversity can provide more stability to be able to weather, you know, the market that we're in right now. There's always stuff to be learned, and I think that the secret sauce is really staying humble and asking questions and continuing. Like, I still attend networking events because I want to learn from other people. I don't attend networking events because, you know, I think that everybody has to hear what I have to say. I want to learn too.
I love it. I love it. We often cite, you know, being curious, or how can we stay more curious a little bit longer. There was the book The Coaching Habit by Michael Bungay Stanier, and he wrote The Coaching Habit, which is, you know, how to help, you know, people that you're coaching with, but it's all about curiosity and staying curious. Because I think that also pairs perfectly what you said at the very beginning of the episode, is that you are always on the lookout for a win-win-win, right? So it's like, how can I help that particular person win in this scenario? And this is a philosophy we live by, is every interaction, every meeting we have, it's about how can we be curious and stay a little bit more curious to help this particular person and give this particular person value. How can we help this deal get value for you and for me and for the, you know, maybe the seller? It's like, how do we stay more curious? I think that is a perfect kind of like secret sauce in entrepreneurship in general, but also just being a good human being. You know, it's a really important piece of like where our secret sauce really needs to be. Elizabeth, we're just wrapping up here. We always want to also leave our listener with, you know, what is their big, you know, what is a big takeaway? Like, what would you want if you were listening right now? What would you want them to be like? This is my biggest takeaway. Like, what message would you want to leave them with?
Um, I want people to understand the power of knowledge and education. So, you know, you can have people on your team that you trust, always back it up. Always do your own research. I know there's a lot of people right now who might go to, they say, okay, they identify private lending as the strategy they want. And they go, well, I don't want to have to find the deals and I don't want to have to learn how to underwrite
Right.
them. So I'm going to go to a mortgage broker and have them do all that for me. There is absolutely no substitute for the hard work of knowing your own numbers, of knowing how to do your own due diligence and knowing how to evaluate your deals and find your people and all those things. So um, I would say I want people to embrace the opportunity to learn and to grow and to educate themselves, and don't take the easy way out of delegating to somebody else, because at the end of the day, you're the one who has to be able to sleep at night. And if you are giving away your power and your ability, then at some point you might not sleep as well at night.
That is such a key takeaway. And, you know, what I'm picturing is, if you're there and you're exploring an idea and you're, you know, we'll call it getting bored or unable to, you know, do that learning and that ongoing understanding. Now, we're not suggesting people stay, you know, and don't take action. We want you to
No,
take
no.
action. But if you're already feeling like it's like, I don't really want to like do that work, then maybe you need to look down a different rabbit hole and, you know, again, find the person, the support in your world, in that world, that can help you along. So I want to thank you so much here, Elizabeth, for taking some time to meet with us, to have a great conversation for the Canadian Wealth Secrets podcast listeners. And I'm wondering, where can they learn more about you, what you do, and to be able to reach out and maybe pick your brain?
Best place to find me is on Instagram at Elizabeth Kelly Consulting. And I'm right now, I am focusing on leveling myself up. I have a new coach for my business and for my personal development as well. So I'm posting 3 stories minimum a day, talking about what I'm thinking, what's going on, what I'm seeing. So it's a great way to kind of follow along and learn more as I level up, and hoping everyone else will join me too.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Elizabeth, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you so much, guys.
See you soon.